Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff, presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and the 2017 college football season is rapidly approaching, and we are here to get you ready for the season as we preview the Colonial Athletic Association. Here's a look at what we have in store for you guys in this season's preview. We'll take a look at some of the incoming talent in our recruiting roundup. We'll hand out some superlatives, including our preseason all-conference team in our conference preseason awards segment. And we will also take an early look at some of the 2018 NFL draft prospects that you want to keep an eye on this season. But first, let's kick things off by taking you around the Colonial Athletic Association as we go into our 4-minute offense. The Colonial Athletic Association is home to the reigning national champion James Madison Dukes, and the Dukes were able to slay the FCS Dragon known as the North Dakota State Bison before moving on to the title game against another Missouri Valley Conference foe, the Youngstown State Penguins. Now with the proverbial bullseye on their backs, can they find their way back to Frisco, Texas is the biggest question of 2017. Second-year head coach and reigning AFCA Coach of the Year Mike Houston has a track record of sustained success over the course of his career, so we shouldn't expect a fall-off in Harrisonburg, Virginia this season. There are 4 new head coaches in the CAA this season. It was a lot of moving and shaking as Russ Huesman left Chattanooga for Richmond, replacing Danny Rocco, who left the Spiders for the Delaware Blue Hens. Elon brought in Kurt Signetti to be the head guy after spending the last 6 seasons as a head coach of Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where he compiled a 53-17 record with 3 Division II playoff appearances. And Villanova replaced legendary head coach Andy Talley, who retired after 32 years with the Wildcats, with longtime assistant coach Mark Ferrante. And Ferrante has been with the program for over 30 years, with the last 18 being under the assistant head coach title. So all 4 programs, in my opinion, definitely got better with each and every one of these new hires. Speaking of great coaching, with the retirement of Villanova's Andy Talley, William & Mary's head coach Jimmy Laycock becomes the longest tenured coach in the FCS. He's entering his 38th season in Williamsburg and has amassed 243 wins in his career, collecting 5 conference titles in the process. Laycock is one of only 3 FCS coaches with 200 or more victories. The 69-year-old Hamilton, Virginia native doesn't show any signs of slowing down and always has his tribe ready to compete each and every Saturday. Sticking with the theme of CAA coaching, New Hampshire has its own living legend in Sean McDonald, and McDonald is entering his 19th season as the Wildcats head coach, which includes one of the more impressive streaks out there. New Hampshire has reached the FCS playoffs 13 consecutive seasons under McDonald, and that's one heck of a feat for the ever-changing landscape of college football. He's a 2-time Eddie Robinson Award winner and will look to win his 3rd as they kick off the 2017 season September 2nd against the Maine Black Bears. In college football, you're only as good as your ability to recruit and develop the players that you bring into your program. And this past signing day, there was no shortage of future impact players added to the conference. So let's hit the recruiting trail to see how well these teams recruited this past offseason. One of the hallmarks of the Albany Great Danes is the work that they do along the offensive line. I like how Hunter Verdi fits into that unit. He plays a very physical game, and as he continues to add strength and explosiveness to his game, I think he'll be a monster up front. Nolan Henderson was the Delaware Gatorade Player of the Year, so this was a huge signee for head coach Danny Rocco. On film, you can see that he has that certain it factor to his game that you want from your signal caller. Henderson could blossom to a star for the Blue Hens. Elon's new tailback Jason Johnson Jr. brings a ton of speed to the position at 5'11", 228 pounds. Running that fast also generates a lot of power, so we'll see how quickly he hits the field for the Phoenix as a true freshman as he goes to a squad that has an excellent group of backs already in tow. Liam Fornadell is an impressive-looking offensive lineman heading to the James Madison Dukes. He has the footwork and the athleticism to climb to the second level with ease, and his hands are consistently in the right place. Coach Houston got himself a really good one from Don Bosco Prep. I love the attitude that Maurice McCray plays with. It's rare these days to find linebackers with that type of mentality versus the ball carrier. No wonder he ended up in Maine, as the Black Bears love that type of attitude and aggressiveness in their defenders. New Hampshire landed a smooth runner in Carlos Washington, and Washington has that smooth glide that allows him the ability to weave in and out of traffic without losing speed. And I think early on, that type of ability will yield itself to him seeing time as a kickoff returner, possibly as a freshman. Rhode Island Rams signee Max Osgood hopes to give the Rams some much-needed firepower over the middle of the field in their passing game. The 6'5", 245-pound tight end plays well on both ends of offense. His underrated ability after the catch is what stood out to me the most as I watched him on film. The Spiders lost some talent within their defensive front seven. They got to work quickly trying to replenish that with a prospect like Caleb Brooks. Now, Brooks can fill out his frame to about 230 to 240 pounds and still maintain that burst and quickness off the ball. I think he's going into a great situation for development and will be a key contributor down the road. I like the versatility of defensive back Justin Burns. Stony Brook has got themselves a player that can play any one of the spots in the secondary, so it will be interesting to see where he ultimately calls his home. Burns has very good instincts, ball skills, and blitzing ability. Towson head coach Rob Ambrose loves finishers along the offensive line. That's what they're getting in 6'4", 330-pound incoming freshman Ethan Knapp. Towson's foundation is built on controlling the line of scrimmage, and that's exactly what Knapp was able to showcase throughout the course of his entire high school career. Quarterback Kyle McCloskey showcases really good arm strength and deep ball accuracy that you want to see from that position. You can also tell how much he's worked on his footwork as a prep star because you don't normally see that level of savvy from high school quarterbacks. He's heading to a really good system where he can thrive coming off play action. William & Mary's Gage Herdman played both sides of the ball in high school and was one heck of a wide receiver in doing so. He'll be playing defensive back for the Tribe, and I can envision him being more of a move piece in the secondary in an attempt to maximize his ball skills. I think he's going to be a star in that defense for Coach Laycock. This conference is filled with talented players across the board, and what better way to illustrate that than to unveil our 2017 preseason all-conference team. There is never a shortage of talent in the CAA. Taking a look at our offensive preseason all-conference team, and once again, the talent on this list never disappoints. The backfield has some home run hitting ability with Stacy Bedell of Stony Brook, and Bedell led the Seawolves in rushing last season, scoring 10 touchdowns as well. And I feel like Devontae Dedman of William & Mary has been around for a decade, but in all seriousness, he's one outstanding football player. The offensive line not only has the beef, but it also has the athleticism as well, with guys like Tamon Paris, Aaron Stinney, and Chris Durant. Brian Shore was phenomenal last season for the James Madison Dukes. The senior signal caller completed 73% of his passes for over 3,000 yards with 29 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. Shore averaged an impressive 10.1 yards an attempt, leading his Dukes to the 2017 FCS National Championship. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, and Andrew Ankra is one of the top defenders in the FCS. The 6'3", 240-pound edge rusher or outside linebacker finished the season with 44 tackles, 6 TFLs, and 3.5 sacks. Charles Bell of Delaware has been a stud since stepping foot on campus as a true freshman, and Osman Kamara of Stony Brook is the next talented defensive lineman to come out of that Seawolves program. Villanova's Rob Rowe was simply spectacular last season for the Wildcats. The senior safety was all over the field as he picked off 7 passes and was in on another 5 pass breakups. You also rarely saw him miss any tackles either. Rowe was solid in that capacity as well, finishing the season with 61 total tackles on the year. We have some really good specialists listed here as well, more in particular an impressive group of returners with Shane Simpson of Towson and Ernest Edwards of Maine. Richmond kicker Griffin Trow was on the money last season. The junior Spider connected on all 42 of his PATs, as well as 23 of 26 on his field goal attempts with a long of 45 yards. Let's take a look at some of the CAA's best buy position in our conference superlative segment. Starting with the best group of quarterbacks in the Colonial, you have to give the nod to the Richmond Spiders. They have two quality starters in Kyle Loletta and Kevin Johnson. Loletta was having his best season last year, throwing for over 3,000 yards with 24 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions before getting hurt in the last game of the season. In steps to back up Kevin Johnson, who led the Spiders to 2 victories in the FCS playoffs in relief as he completed 65% of his passes for 761 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaging 10 yards an attempt. We have a tie for the best running back core between James Madison and Delaware. Both boast impressive depth with some game breakers in the backfield. The Dukes lose Khalid Abdullah to graduation, but they still have Carton Johnson and Trey Sharp. That duo combined for over 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns. Both backs averaged over 5.5 yards a carry, and they also had Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket transfer Marcus Marshall to the backfield as well. This is a guy that ran for over 1,200 yards the last 2 seasons for Georgia Tech, which he led both years in rushing. And when you look at the Blue Hens, they are led by Wes Hills and Thomas Jefferson. Both guys finished above 700 yards rushing with 13 touchdowns combined. They lose Jalen Randolph, but coming off of a redshirt season is Kareem Williams. The 5'11", 205-pound junior ran for 795 yards back in 2015 with a healthy 5.3 yards per carry, giving the Blue Hens
We have another tie for the best
three-headed rushing between
monster.
William and Mary and Richmond. The Tribe are led by the explosive Devontae Dedman and Daniel Kuzjak. They are also solid at tight end as well with Andrew Kaskin, who finished 3rd on the team in receiving with 269 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wideout Jack Armstrong is another talented perimeter player that they bring to the table as well. The Spiders lose a guy the caliber of Brian Brown, but they still have a strong core heading into the season led by Tyler Wilkins and Jamal Bevels. Richmond also has a special tight end of their own in Garrett Hudson, who finished the season with over 500 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. The James Madison Dukes own the best offensive line in the CAA. What was impressive last season is that they played a ton of guys up front, and this year they're led by Aaron Stinney and A.J. Bolden on the left side. Now keep an eye on Tyree Chavis and also Mac Patrick in the starting lineup, as both guys played a lot last season, making a few starts, and they are ready to handle full-time roles. I like what the Stony Brook Seawolves bring to the table along the defensive line. They're led by senior defensive tackle Osman Kamara, who finished last season with 24 tackles, 2.5 TFLs, and a sack. Both he and Josh Valentine are big guys that can move and are very disruptive. Alan Singleton provides strong rotational depth up front as well. And keep an eye on redshirt freshman Peterson Octavian. The 6'4", 230-pound edge rusher from Naples, Florida, has the ability to turn the corner and accelerate to the quarterback. The Delaware Blue Hens linebacking core is extremely impressive. Charles Bell and Troy Reeder were the top 2 leading tacklers on the squad as they combined for 157 stops, 16 TFLs, 2 sacks, and 3 interceptions. That's a ton of production from 2 players at the second level. Senior Anthony Jackson finished 4th on the team in tackles last year with 41 stops. 27 of those were solo efforts, and he was 2nd on the team in TFLs with 7.5. Armin Ware rounds out this group as they run a 3-4 defense, as he posted 3.5 TFLs and 2.5 sacks. Villanova has a strong secondary unit led by All-American safety Rob Roll, and he gets a ton of support from fellow safety Rashawn Stewart and top-notch corners in Malik Reeves and Trey Johnson. It wouldn't surprise me to see sophomore safety Julian Williams on the field a lot this season, probably as that 3rd safety. He got his feet wet last year as a freshman and has a ton of talent and upside. Towson has one of the more complete special teams units in the entire FCS. They are very strong in every facet of special teams play, from kicking to coverage to the return game. Kicker Aiden O'Neill connected on 18 of 22 of his field goal attempts with a long of 55 yards. Pat Toomey will more than likely take over the punting duties this year for Towson after spending last year as the kickoff specialist, where he averaged 54 yards per kick. And returner Shane Simpson averaged 26.9 yards per kickoff return with a 100-yard kickoff return touchdown. In the 2017 NFL Draft this past April, we saw 15 prospects from the FCS get their names called, and many more have signed free agent deals in the NFL and also in the CFL. And this is shaping up to be yet another strong class in the football championship subdivision. And here are a few guys that you want to keep an eye on for the 2018 NFL Draft.
There are many more prospects in the CAA than what we have listed here, so this list of prospects is just to get you started as we enter the season. Rob Roll, Andrew Ankra, and Charles Bell, in my opinion, should find themselves on many preseason All-Star Game watch lists. Osman Kamara of Stony Brook flashed early in his Seawolves career and just continued to do so throughout. I've seen him play live twice, and each time I came away highly impressed with his game. Stacey Bedell is one of the more underrated backs in the FCS. He's looking to put together a fantastic senior season. His teammate Tamon Paris has huge upside potential. At 6'5", 310, Paris has the ability to play multiple spots up front. In my opinion, he can thrive at either tackle spot and also shows enough quickness to be able to hold his own inside as a guard. Malik Reeves is another impressive prospect as well. He's 6 feet, 200 pounds, and has the press man skills that you want to see on the outside. He's a patient player that's technically sound, and most important, at least in my book, he has the ball skills that make it very dangerous when you're throwing the ball his way. Also keep an eye on fellow Wildcat Ryan Bell. He's more of your H-back type that can block and get down the middle of the field. He's also very consistent when it comes to catching a football.
We've now reached the part of the show where it's time to go more in depth on what we can expect within the conference in 2017.
The Rhode Island Rams have some optimism entering the 2017 season. It's all about continuity, and it starts with having 16 starters returning on a roster that played better toward the end of the year. With impressive efforts against Elon and Towson, head coach Jim Fleming hopes that the momentum carries over into this season. I like running back Harold Cooper. He's their game breaker that gives them a shot each and every week. And if the Rams can get better versus the run, their defense will improve dramatically. That'll be put to the test the second game of the season as they play host to Stony Brook. Kurt Signetti era starts at Elon, who returns 18 starters to the lineup, and there's two ways to look at that number. You can look at it positively and say, hey, they have a lot of experience coming back, or you can look at it negatively and say those are the same guys that led them to a 2-9 record last season. I choose positivity. One thing you know about Kurt Signetti's IUP squads is that they had a ton of production out of their offensive line and their defensive front seven. If we're being honest, that's where the Phoenix had most of their struggles, if not all of their struggles last season. They do have solid skill players in place, but what they can get from the quarterback position will be the biggest question mark in 2017. You'll see some improvement this year from the Phoenix, as I think they'll be more consistent from week to week. The Maine Black Bears finished with their first winning season since 2013, posting a 6-5 record. Second-year head coach Joe Harasimiak was excellent in implementing his philosophy early on and watching it being played out throughout the rest of the season. In order to build on last season's success, the Black Bears have to find consistency at quarterback and on special teams. Both are huge question marks entering the season, and Coach Harasimiak is a defensive-minded guy, so he understands both the significance of some of those defensive losses, but also understands how to overcome those losses schematically. You can expect a slight step back defensively, but they'll still be a very tough group moving forward. They have a huge matchup in week 1 as they open up in conference against New Hampshire, which should be a very good litmus test for the Black Bears. Stony Brook can be one of the perennial powers in the CAA if they could just find a quarterback that gives them consistent play week in, week out. What we know about a Chuck Priori squad is that they will run the ball, they will run it well, and they will play a physical brand of defense, and they will have some explosive perimeter players on both sides of the ball. This team causes problems for every squad they face because of how they're built. The Seawolves lost some close, winnable games late last season and hope that they can get the quarterback position figured out so those losses can turn into wins in 2017. The Delaware Blue Hen situation is very similar to what we just talked about with Stony Brook. I really like what they bring to the table defensively. The Blue Hens should be one of the better defensive teams in the FCS. On offense, they have depth and talent in the backfield, coupled with the fact that their offensive line is pretty good. That should make for a very good 2017 season. What could be the potential stumbling block, and has been for the last 2 seasons, has been the play from the quarterbacks. The Blue Hens average 97 yards passing a game, and that won't cut it in any level of football. It wouldn't surprise me to see true freshman and Delaware Gatorade Player of the Year Nolan Henderson be in the mix for the starting job. Before the Blue Hens can return to the playoffs, they have to get that situated pretty quickly at the most important position in football. The common theme in the Colonial is that you have to own the line of scrimmage, and that aptly describes the Towson Tigers. Riding a 3-game winning streak to end the season, the Tigers are looking to get back into the playoffs in 2017. The reason for optimism is their strong running game with 2 excellent runners in Shane Simpson and Deshaun Wethington. The Tigers are going to be strong defensively as well, especially up front. The improvement will have to come from the passing game, both offensively and defending it on defense. The hope is that a healthy Morgan Mihalik will solve that problem on offense, and having to break in some young receivers, that'll be something you have to watch for early on in the year, which means that timing has to be ready to go from week 1. And that passing game will get a huge test in week 1 against Morgan State, who boasts arguably the best secondary in the MEAC. The New Hampshire Wildcats are trying to make it 14 straight FCS playoff appearances this year, and when you have that type of streak going for you, it's tough to count you out no matter what your depth chart says. For the Wildcats to make this a reality, they'll have to hit the ground running along the offensive line. That's where they lost some key pieces to graduation, including tight end Jordan Powell. Defensively, they'll be a sound group at every level. They have tremendous depth along the defensive line, one that probably should have made our best of list. And with a lot of depth there, you look at those first 3 games of the season, they're going to be tough. They face Maine, Georgia Southern, and Holy Cross. They also have to travel to Stony Brook, James Madison, and William and Mary. The Wildcats will definitely have their work cut out for them this upcoming season. The Albany Great Danes were one of the surprise stories in the 2016 FCS season. Opponents were not ready for their physical play along both sides of the line of scrimmage. They were also not ready for the breakout year of running back Elijah Ibutokin Hanks, who ran for over 1,400 yards last season. Now, there'll be some retooling along the offensive line, which was their strength last year, but their defensive line should once again be a tough unit led by defensive end Malachi Hoskins. The Great Danes felt as though they were snubbed last year for the FCS playoffs, and they absolutely were. But in order for that not to happen in 2017, they have to get better in the red zone offensively. And if that happens, they can punch their ticket early and not leave it up to a committee to decide. I really like how the William and Mary tribe are built. They're strong on both sides of the ball, and they're always tough in the trenches. And where they have to get better in order to make some serious noise this year in the CAA is in the explosiveness department. That's what's lacked from this team the last couple of seasons. The tribe has to be able to generate big plays in the passing game, big plays from the pass rush, and all of that has to take place this year for them to make the playoffs. Obviously, the big question is who will start at quarterback, but I don't think they can go wrong with either option, either Brandon Battle or Tommy McKee. Both of those guys are tremendous players. Keep an eye on their Week 1 matchup against Virginia, as things could get very interesting in Charlottesville. The Richmond Spiders are still one of the stronger teams in the FCS despite losing some key defensive pieces. Now, starting with that side of the ball, in my opinion, that's where new head coach Russ Huesman will have the biggest impact. He's a defensive guy and is coming off building a stellar defensive football team at Chattanooga, so don't expect a drop-off from the Spiders on defense. Now, offensively speaking, they have depth at every skill position, and they're solid up front along the offensive line. Their offense averaged 28 points a game last year, and they operated with tremendous balance as well, and that won't change under Huesman. And it's funny how things work out for the Spiders as they open up against Sam Houston State, the team that knocked Huesman and his Mocs out of the playoffs last year. That storyline alone should make the opener an instant classic. Head coach Mark Ferrante's foundation for this football team will be what it has been since he first arrived on campus 30 years ago: strength along both sides of the line of scrimmage. That's what makes Villanova a tough opponent, even for FBS foes. They can take over a game with their offensive and defensive lines. This season, what we should expect is, to be honest, more of the same. When I say more of the same, I'm speaking of the attention to detail, the high level of execution, and the ability to turn the ball over. All of that will look very similar to Wildcat fans in 2017. What we will see differently will probably be in the passing game. I would expect to see the Wildcats open it up a little bit more offensively to not become one-dimensional down the line. A well-balanced Villanova offense, in my opinion, is a very dangerous one. We'll get to see what new tweaks were made to this offense as they run the Pennsylvania circuit the first 3 weeks of the season against Lehigh, Temple, and Lafayette. There were a lot of questions about James Madison heading into the 2016 season as they were bringing in a new head coach, and it's safe to say that the people are no longer questioning that move as the Dukes are coming off a national championship season. In order to repeat, the Dukes have to dance with who they brought to the party, and in that case, it's their running game and their ability to turn the ball over. James Madison was one of the best rushing teams in the country last season and got great play from quarterback Brian Shore. Now, despite some of the key losses on defense, the Dukes should be able to be disruptive once again, especially with Raven Green patrolling the secondary. Green led the team in interceptions last year with 6, and we look at the schedule, it sets up nice for JMU as they get Villanova, New Hampshire, and Richmond all at home, and the opener against East Carolina could be prime for a JMU upset.
Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts, and if you want to check out our other FCS season previews, visit our website at footballgameplan.com/FCS Kickoff. Also on iTunes, subscribe to Football Game Plan Podcast, where you can find our FCS Opening Drive podcast.